How are the New York Giants built to support first-round quarterback Jaxson Dart in his rookie season? We're exploring that today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much.
Joe, happy Jaxson Dart Spotlight Day to you here on Locked On NFL Scouting. The tradition continues. We do this annually, looking at the rookie quarterback situations for the top quarterbacks in the class. And both of the first-round quarterbacks are going to get the spotlight before we hit hump day this year.
Well, I've peeked at a few 2026 mock drafts, Kyle, and it feels like maybe this is going to be a week next year based on how this class stacks up. We might have to do some summer scouting on these quarterbacks, man. I got to know about these guys.
We got Garrett Nussmeier, Drew Aller. Everybody's going to tell you Arch Manning isn't coming out. Cade Klubnik, Lenora Sellers. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few.
Which one am I going to like?
I don't know. Give me the, I don't want to say elevator pitch, but give me like the 3-sentence. This is usually what I gravitate towards in a college quarterback projecting to the pros.
I like physical upside, but can win from the pocket and has a resume of overcoming adversity.
Might be Drew Aller overcoming that coaching there in big games. You know,
seen a few highlights, Kyle. Seen a few highlights of this Drew Aller.
Inconsistent still. Him and Lenora Sellers are the two high upside, elite physical tools guys. Sellers, South Carolina. His is more decision making, where Aller is kind of just like the spray chart's still kind of all over the place. But I'll let you make your own mind up. We'll dive into these guys.
Do any of these guys have like size concerns where you're just like holding your breath that they can meet a threshold?
No, I don't think that dynamic exists with this year's perceived top of group. I mean, we'll see. You never know. You might get Dylan Gabriel top 100 every now and again.
That pick's getting more goofy every day.
That's kind of crazy, isn't it?
It sure is. All right. Jaxson Dart, his time to shine here. We're going to assess this situation that he's stepping into. Kyle and I had Jordan Palmer on the podcast several years ago, and he said something to us that I think has really affected the way we look at quarterbacks coming into the NFL. He said teams bust quarterbacks more than quarterbacks bust teams, and you really start to appreciate the situations that these guys step into. And so we've made it a priority every year since 2021.
Yep, that's right.
To assess the situations that quarterbacks are stepping into. And we're going to look at Jaxson Dart through the same lens that we have every first-round quarterback since then. We're going to assess the coaching, the quarterback room, the pass catchers, the offensive line, the run game, and the defense. Kyle and I are going to grade them on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is a fail, 2 is below average, 3 is average, 4 is excellent, 5 is perfect. And we'll see where these guys land. And the fun part is we've been tracking this data since 2021, so we can compare this situation to other first-round quarterback situations that we've assessed.
We're going to start with the coaching staff. New York Giants coaching staff. Brian Daboll is entering into, this is year 4 for Brian Daboll. Offensive coordinator Mike Kafka kind of got some shine a little bit this year in the pre-draft process with some elevated opportunities from a coaching staff. It was, I forget which team it was, but the Senior Bowl. It was one of the head coaches at the Senior Bowl. Shea Tierney, the offensive passing game coordinator and quarterbacks coach. It's really the extent of the offensive. Chad Hall, assistant quarterbacks coach. It's kind of the extent of your offensive support staff that will directly be impacting Jaxson Dart.
That's right. And what's interesting about this head coach, offensive coordinator combo of Daboll and Kafka, Daboll was in Buffalo for the drafting of Josh Allen. and Mike Kafka was in Kansas City for the drafting of Patrick Mahomes. So you'll like that, I'm sure. And obviously, Kafka, former NFL quarterback, Daboll, coach in the league for a long, long time. Shea Tierney is a coach that Josh Allen has spoken very highly about as a key person in his personal development as a quarterback, and I'm sure that'll be very helpful for Jaxson Dart. And Chad Hall was a receivers coach for the Bills. Then he went to Jacksonville. Has now kind of switched to being a quarterback's coach, but it feels like anywhere he's been highly loved by the players as well, and everyone speaks highly of them. I like this group. I know that maybe we wish that there was more success to point to from Daboll as a head coach. I mean, obviously that first year was pretty exciting. I think they've had to overcome their roster in some ways. They had to get it right, and I feel like, it's in a pretty good spot. So I think we'll learn a lot more about Brian Daboll, but I look at this group of coaches and feel like there's a lot of know-how. There's a lot of experience with rookie quarterbacks that have been successful. I love how Brian Daboll was willing to really adapt to allow Josh Allen to have the success that he had early in his career. And you never really looked at the situation and thought Brian Daboll was going to run the offense a certain way and Josh Allen had to fit in the box. He actually did a good job of evolving and changing and getting personnel differences and incorporating motion and giving him tips and tells to help him be successful. So I like this group. I'm actually scoring it a 4.
Okay. I am not going to score it a 4. And at some point, your record is what it says you are, right? And I'm not just going to point to the head coaching record of 18-32-1 in 3 years as the head coach of the New York Giants. Brian Daboll is kind of the centerpiece of this conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's been the offensive coordinator for 2 years in Cleveland to start his career, and he was 32nd and 29th in yards and 29th.
Who was the quarterback? Who was the quarterback, man?
No. Okay.
They ran the ball well.
Miami in 2011, 22nd and 20th. Kansas City in 2012, 24th.
Tyler Thigpen.
Buffalo in 2018, 30 and 30. I'm not – Josh Allen's become a transcendent player, and he gets credit for what Josh Allen, his role in the development of Josh Allen. But then it's 18, 35, 29 and 30, 30 and 31, 24 and 23, 30 and 30. Like it's been middling with the exception of years 3 and 4 with what has become the league MVP and one of the best 2 quarterbacks in the game of football on the face of the planet.
Got Daniel Jones to have a pretty good season. I've said that Daniel Jones.
And then what Daniel Jones looked like as he got more time on task.
Understood, but still being able to coach a guy above their talent. And I mean, the injuries, the infrastructure, I don't know, man. I think the talent says a lot about those results more than anything that Brian Daboll is or is not doing.
And that's why I'm not going to kill Brian Daboll. I'm just not going to give him a 4. I'm giving him a 2.5. I like this coaching staff.
Big discrepancy. That's below average.
Yeah.
All right.
The entire body of work, and then I know you are in a position to intimately know some of the more peripheral members of this coaching staff because they spent time on Daboll's offensive staff in Buffalo, right? Mm-hmm. But if I am, without having that level of intimate knowledge that you have about the inner workings, and you're probably right, but just from what I know and I look at the support staff and say, I don't really see a lot of needle moving players here. And Brian Daboll, it's or get off the pot time. And hopefully Jaxson Dart is the kind of talent and has the kind of tools that he can turn into another player that comes out somewhat like Josh Allen. But the body of work without Josh Allen tells me, probability speaking, it's not. So I'm giving him 2.5.
All right. Good discrepancy here to start our conversation. We'll get into the quarterback room, pass catchers, offensive line, and more here on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with us. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. I had a lot of fun over the weekend. I actually got in on the action for those Game 7s between the Rockets and Warriors and the Nuggets and Clippers, and that Nuggets and Clippers game was a blowout, but I had a lot of fun watching to the very end because I had some action on the over, and it hit, and so that made it even more enjoyable. Which players are showing up at the biggest moments, and how could tracking their trends help you build your next bet? What would it look like to combine live prop bets mid-game based on how the action unfolds? If you got a read on who's heating up, why not back it up with a same-game parlay? New to FanDuel? Perfect. It's the right time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA.
I feel like we just disagreed more on Brian Daboll than we did like any draft prospect this entire cycle.
It's good, though.
Yeah.
He's healthy. I hope that nobody listens to this podcast so that Kyle and I agree on every single
Just sit here and be bobblehead quarterbacks and not in agreement with everything we're saying.
It's very boring.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of different ways you can interpret this quarterback room.
Right. Right.
So how you choose to quantify it, I'm really interested in. So you have varying degrees of success with the quarterbacks in the quarterback room, but you have a former first-round pick quarterback in Jameis Winston who's accustomed to the pressures that come with being a team's perceived franchise savior, right?
Number one pick. That's certainly what he was, right?
Yep. And Jameis has done a lot of growing up during his time in the NFL, and some of those experiences, how he handles pressure, how he kind of handled the situation in Cleveland last year with, I think, a lot of grace, and playing and kind of energizing the team, and then getting benched again as they tried to figure out what they had in a young player. And I kind of got the sense they didn't want to win too many more games down the stretch in Cleveland last year. So it was Dorian Thompson-Robinson's job. I think he's been through a lot that for Jaxson Dart, like if Jameis is a piece of the quarterback room this year, I think there's a lot that Jaxson can absorb from him. There's also Tommy DeVito as the 15 minutes of fame, UDFA, lightning in a bottle.
He's the most experienced quarterback in the system. In the room, he'll be answering questions.
And then you have Russell Wilson, who kind of was the lottery ticket, who caught lightning in a bottle and landed in the right spot and had the right infrastructure around him, and has spent the last 4 or 5 years trying to, I guess, kind of transcend that model that Seattle had when they didn't let him cook. And the results have been very mixed. And I think the quarterback whose impression I like the most on him is potentially Jameis for Jaxson.
It's tough to quantify, right? Because you look at this and you love experience. I mean, you got crazy good experience here. You've got number one overall pick. What is their appetite going to be to helping Jaxson Dart acclimate to the NFL? Does Russell Wilson still feel like he's a guy? And
I'm sure he does.
So that doesn't really.
I don't like that. Yeah,
I don't like that. Like Andy Dalton. I keep going back to Andy Dalton because that's the guy who just knows who he is, right? Russell Wilson probably signed with the New York Giants because he wants to be the starting quarterback.
Well, and they had to come out already and say Russell's the starter. Like that was part of the fine print when he signed the contract, and then they draft Jackson. Russell's the starter.
And you know as well as I do, Russell Wilson is going to frustrate the hell out of Brian Daboll.
Oh, if he had issues with Daniel Jones,
yes.
Like at least Daniel, it felt like, was well intended with trying to operate the offense. Russ is the last couple spots that it's the execution of the offense has not been there.
Right.
And just like, I'm looking for a big play, and then I'm looking to not turn the ball over and find completions and help my stats and get the ball to the back underneath. And we're going to have a very inefficient offense as a result.
I almost wish he wasn't here.
You said it. So we are.
Well, you seem to agree with
me. We're doing the bobblehead quarterback thing here, where we're going to say, I'm going to sit here and agree with you. And I get it. Like their hands were tied.
Yeah. Because
it felt like they had a quarterback that they really liked, and it was Cam Warren. And then it turned into, as this process went on and they're exploring other options, hey, we really like Jaxson Dart, but we're really not prepared for the value proposition of taking Jaxson Dart at number 3 overall. We need to make sure we have something else in place. And that turns into signing Russell Wilson with an understanding he's the starter. What's it going to look like in October if the Giants are 2-5 and there's pressure to win and Brian Daboll's feeling the heat? And then you're going to change to Jaxson Dart and Russell Wilson's going to throw a hissy fit because he got benched. He's not the starter anymore.
It's possible. That's
Right.
a very strong possibility. Yeah.
And I don't like those dynamics for a young guy coming in. I don't.
First round quarterbacks play as rookies, man. They do. They just do. So it's inevitable. What does that transition look like? And the challenging thing's going to be if you start the season with Russell Wilson, then you have to make that choice to bench him. So
right. I mean, and you saw how Pittsburgh handled it last year when Fields came in and did some nice things and they were winning games, and then they made the move to Russ anyway, and they rode it out with Russ when very clearly, like,
yeah, the wheels fell off. Lightning in a bottle for a few games.
And moonballs and checkdowns and moonballs and checkdowns.
The last 3 years of Russ Wilson has been that. I don't see any reason why that will change. Quantifying this is tough, Kyle. You can talk yourself in and out of things. I'm going to land on a 3 here.
Okay.
But you could convince me it's a 4. You can convince me it's a 2. We'll meet in the middle, at least in my own mind.
I also gave it a 3 because I do like the Jameis element. I like that there's a familiar name that's not particularly threatening in Tommy DeVito. It's just that there's that elephant in the room at the top of the depth chart. We got to get moving here. We got 4 more categories to cover. We're more than halfway through the program.
Let's cook.
All right. So I see what you did there. You want to cook? You get pass catchers. Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton back with the team. They signed Zach Pascal, Lil Jordan Humphrey, some young guys, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, Emir Smith-Marset, kind of as I thought he was kind of an interesting guy out of Iowa a couple years ago. The tight end position, Theo Johnson, 4th round pick in 24, super toolsy, former high school wide receiver, played at Penn State, great physical tools. Greg Dulcich, I think, is an awesome flyer for them. Thomas Fidone in the 7th round. What a steal to get that in the 7th round as what was a really promising player last year at Nebraska. And then the running back room of Tyrone Tracy, Devin Singletary, Cam Scatabo as kind of the top 3 as potential pass catchers out of the backfield.
My initial reaction to kind of researching this morning was this should be the team that signs Amari Cooper or Keenan Allen to add that like different skill set. They have, I think Brian Daboll, he likes those like smaller, shiftier receivers.
Yeah.
I think supplementing that with a Cooper or Keenan Allen kind of feels right to me. That if that's if they're willing to go to a team like the Giants, I don't think many people look as a contender at this point.
And this is overwhelmingly an 11 personnel football team.
Oh, geez. Yes.
So
you would think.
And I think that 3rd wide receiver, if it ends up being, Hyatt, I think has some intrigue as kind of the big body down the field type and Jackson's style of play. And if we're being honest, Jameis and Russ.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There should be some potential for some run there. Is Neighbors going to be the guy that you let predominantly live in the slot and be a bucket maker? And if that's the case, maybe they don't feel they have a room for another name like that. But if Neighbors is going to be wherever the first progression is more often than not, then I kind of like the idea of another potential bucket maker as a route runner, even if it's a guy that is a little bit older. So I think that's not a bad call out, but I like the dynamics of this room.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. I think this is an above average group.
It's young. I'd say that it's very young. I mean, Chris Manhertz is like a blocking tight end. Devin Singletary, I guess, is your veteran in the room with running backs. Darius Slayton, your veteran in the room with the receivers. There's playmaking a potential here. I gave this a 3.
Okay. I'm at a 3.5, just for what I think Malik Neighbors will be. Devin Singletary, Tyrone Tracy, I think are suitable options as receiving tight ends. The receiving upside with Theo Johnson and Greg Dulcich is through the roof as far as upside. And Darius Slayton's been a productive NFL player. So it's for me, really, Neighbors being what Neighbors was last year was enough for me to say, like, hey, I feel like you have the centerpiece and the rest of it around it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel good about the upside and also the floor. So I gave it a 3.5.
All right, Kyle, we are going to crank up the pace. O-line, run game, defense, other side of it, stick with us. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight Calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in one easy-to-see place. Skylight Calendar has been a game changer for my family. I've got a 5-year-old that has activities all week long. Our weekends are full of things that my wife has planned. This calendar keeps us organized. I can tell you that my wife really appreciates not having to remind me all the time about all these happenings. I can see our entire week clearly on that beautiful 15-inch HD screen. Check it out, folks, right now. Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That is skylightcal.com/NFL.
New York Giants offensive line. Projected starting 5. Andrew Thomas, left tackle. John Runyon, left guard. John Michael Schmitz at center. Greg Van Roten at right guard. Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle. Notable backups would include former third-round pick Josh Izudu, former first-round pick Evan Neal kicking inside to compete at guard this year. Marcus Mbow, 5th-round draft choice in this year's NFL draft. And Aaron Stinney, UDFA from, or not UDFA, unrestricted free agent from Tampa Bay.
I think there's some nice floor to this offensive line, and Runyon, Van Roten, and Illuminor. Those guys, you know exactly what you're getting out of them. Is there a lot of ceiling? I don't think so, but they're yellows, right? In our world, they're sufficient level starters.
Sufficient starters.
Andrew Thomas is obviously has the upside to be one of the best left tackles in the game. Stay healthy and be that, please.
Please.
And then Michael Schmitz, young player, developing. I think there's a lot of ceiling to unlock there. And I think, kind of long-term looking at Marcus Mbow as another ceiling piece for this offensive line. So I relatively see a high floor. I have questions about durability with Thomas, which he's earned those questions. And I want to see JMS take that next step. So I think this has the potential to be a sufficient offensive line, baked in with some questions, but also not a ton of ceiling overall. I come in at a 2.75 on this.
Okay, that's totally fair. I gave it a 3, where I thought this projects as an adequate offensive line. Fully healthy season of Andrew Thomas might bump it to being slightly above average for me. But I agree. I think the big X factor here is what you have with John Michael Schmitz.
Mm-hmm.
I would not hate if you had Marcus Mbow learn how to snap. I think he'd be best at the NFL level as a center.
And then
doesn't have tackle length.
Play guard, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, he's a little bit lighter in the trunk. But the athleticism and the open field ability is huge with him. So I'll be interested to see what their long-term ultimate plan is here and where he ultimately settles in. But JMS kind of being the guy in the middle that has not made the leap yet, I think is kind of where I'm least confident about this group. And then they kind of have, at this point, unfortunately, it becomes a lottery ticket with Evan Neal. But like moving him inside, felt he probably should have moved inside last year.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there with that transition for him.
And Bo at center, particularly in this offense where I know that Daboll likes to run a lot of pin and pull, which he did with Mitch Morse. And Bo's got that type of range to be a big asset. Yeah, for sure.
Running game. So we had Tyrone Tracy was kind of the breakout draft steal where if the Giants didn't do what they did as a team last year, and if the Eagles didn't do what they did as a team last year, maybe and if the Giants didn't have the offseason hard knocks, maybe the Saquon Barkley discussion would be a little different because Tracy ended up being a nice player.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a productive player. There's some ball security questions with him that I think are fair to invoke. Devin Singletary, a high floor player. I know we got to book it, but can I please read this comment about Cam Scatavo from my subtext or from my Substack?
I was wondering if this was going to come up.
This is from Ross, who signed up for Touchdown Miami just to leave this comment. And so, Ross, you're going to get your moment in the sun, and Cam Scatabo is going to get his moment in the sun. 4th-round pick added to this running back room. I don't give an expletive that this is a Dolphins page. Kyle, your hating expletive comments about Cam Scatabo are so egregious that it got me to pay for a Substack subscription just that I could tell you that your opinion is complete trash. You and Marino are going to kiss some serious scatta booty throughout this guy's entire career. I promise you that I will stay subscribed and remind you to each and every week that you are the fools who overlooked this workhorse running back. I missed your take on Damian Martinez, but based on your blunderous fiasco of a player evaluation of Scatabo, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that you missed the boat on this draft jam as well. Get ready to wipe the smug grin off your face. I'll be relentless. Go Fins. Love both your shows. Respect the work you and Joe do. But expletive, you two are wrong. Cam Scatabo.
What a journey there, huh?
Well, and the reaction was that Cam and Tyrone Tracy were going to break the franchise record for combined yardage, right?
That they would be better than Brandon Jacobs in this year. This year, as rookies, they would be better statistically than Brandon Jacobs and Ahmad Bradshaw ever were, which in 2010, they combined for 2,431 yards from scrimmage, over 5 yards per touch, and 17 touchdowns. Please, I will personally refund your subscription to Touchdown Miami.
I'll jump in on that. No, I think he's on yours too. I think he's on Herd Mentality. So I'll if you do Herd Mentality,
you get all your money back for subtax. Well, Kyle and I will pay you your money back if they combine for more yards and touchdowns than Jacobs and Bradshaw. That doesn't mean we don't like Scatabo. Like that's what's lost in this conversation.
So, yeah, I think the Scatabo conversation kind of jumped the shark a little bit throughout the pre-draft process a little bit.
I called him the best short yardage back in the class.
I think that's an accurate statement. And I think he's going to be a great hammer to go with some of the explosiveness that Tracy brings to the table. But when I watched Cam and his receiving game profile at Arizona State, it was a lot of this swing routes where they'd release either the tight end or an offensive lineman out into the flat as an escort, and you're kind of just manufacturing checkdowns with a lead blocker to him. So I'm a little worried about the passing game profile there. And because of his style of play, I don't think he's going to be an overly efficient runner, right? Like he's going to get awesome yards after contact, and he's going to keep the chains moving for you in short yardage situations. And I think he has a role to play, but I just did not see him as a workhorse running back when projecting him to the NFL level.
Well, and he's an easy player to fall in love with, man. This guy runs like every touch is going to be the last time he's ever going to step on a football field. It's infectious. His temperament is amazing. You've seen him like will Arizona State at times, like an easy player to love. And the message that we tried to share was that we always felt like there was going to be a little bit of an overrated component to like the reality of Cam Scatabo and, you know, just the overall hype that comes from a fun player to root for. Like nobody's debating that. I think he's a really good compliment to Tyrone Tracy. I really do. But come on now, 2,400 yards and 17 touchdowns.
Yeah, that was
as rookies is nuts.
That's why we were giggling, right?
That's what it comes down to.
I think there is a floor and a ceiling with the running back room as a whole, though, where I don't think you necessarily like Devin Singletary and Cam Scatabo kind of have that phone booth slipperiness to them. Tracy has the explosive play element and I think can be kind of a weapon with checkdowns underneath that I don't think the other two players can be.
Singletary is going to help in pass pro. That's the most important thing that he's going to bring to this group, where you know, that's a big jump for Tyrone Tracy as a recent player to the running back position. I think that's really where Devin's going to help.
So I think that'll be the challenge for Daboll, is getting the right players on the field at the right time and not tipping your hand to what you're doing. Because I think the best pass pro player easily is Singletary. I think the best rusher is Tracy. And I think the best early down rusher is Tracy. And I think the best 3rd and 1 rusher is Scatabo.
Yeah. It's good mix of skill sets. Kind of what you're looking for in your top 3 backs. I like the ingredients here. Daboll's coached good rushing offenses. I think there's a relatively high floor O-line, good young bats. I'm giving this a 3.
I'm also giving this a 3. So we are coming into our last category, the defense. You are sitting at a 15.75, and I'm sitting at a 15.
Made up a lot of ground there after we had a big
point and a half discrepancy.
Yeah, on coaching to start.
Yeah, I got a half point on pass catcher. I got a quarter point on offensive line.
All right, defensively, I like a lot of this personnel. I like how they got better. You talk about a front that added Abdul Carter, Roy Robertson-Harris, who I think really works for this defense. Darius Alexander in the draft. Chauncey Golson is a nice player. Shane Bowen, a good resume of run defense, and I think he's got the ingredients for that to really work here. Then you add Paulson Adebo, Javon Holland to this secondary to go with young players like Drew Phillips and Tyler Nubin and Deion Banks. I think there's a nice recipe of, hey, we're going to be able to stop the run. And when we earn the right to rush the passer, we can unleash a lot of guys rushing with, some young, talented ball hawks on the back end. So I like the makeup of this group. It's really just a matter of it coming together and then also playing enough complementary football so that you're not stressing either side of the ball with any, overburden, if you will, to carry the team. So I come in at a 3, but I think there's an arrow pointing up with a 3 here.
Okay. Yeah, that potential NASCAR package with Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns,
Dexter Lawrence.
Is it Dexter?
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah. Yes, he's on the field.
Is it? I mean, if it's not, if you want to give him a blow, is it Darius? Is it Chauncey Golston? Like that fourth rusher, they've got some options now.
Yeah,
some guys that can put their hand in the dirt and play inside and rush inside gaps. So, I kind of agree with your synopsis. I think the floor is that of an average defense, but kind of like what I did with the pass catchers, I'm going to come in incrementally above average. I think this is an above average group. You mentioned the arrow pointing up, so I'm going 3.25 versus you had 3 for the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which means Joe Marino gave the New York Giants situation for Jaxson Dart an 18.75, which is it's a healthy number.
It's what I had for Bo Nix last year, I think.
Just short. You had 19 for Bo last year. And I had 18.25, which is equivalent to the situation that I had for Drake May last year. So a couple of immediate year one from last year's situations that scored the same as these situations did for each one of those players. And look, Bo Nix, Drake May, I think both of those guys played respectively well. I think some of the flaws elsewhere on those teams, Bo with the pass catching group when it came for time for rubber to meet the road and you get things done in the playoffs, and then for New England, just the complementary element of protection and the defense. There was some limitations, but those guys individually performed at, I think, at a level that both those fan bases would be very excited about. And for New York, if they had that happen this year, then I can't imagine they'd be in a bad place.
Quick overarching thought on both of these situations, Cam Ward and Jaxson Dart. I generally like that neither player went to a coaching staff that was brand new. Like, at least you had 1 year with Tennessee. They've had their year to kind of find their groove. And then, of course, this is year 4 with Daboll. So I like that there's some established elements to those coaching staffs for both of these guys to step into.
Yep. I think that's a great call out. That's going to do it for us here today on the show. Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino, locked on NFL scouting in the books for Tuesday. We hope you will come back and see us again tomorrow. That's going to do it for us here today. Make it a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you about it all again soon.